Every powerful criminal in The Wire eventually tells you what he cannot walk away from. Sometimes he says it directly. More often, he shows it by making one terrible decision after another. Avon has his corners. Marlowe has his name. Omar has his code. Those attachments make these men interesting, and they also make them reachable. The Greek is different. He can leave the city, abandon a name, replace a partner, and return when the danger has passed. Baltimore never becomes part of who he is. That is a large reason why Baltimore never defeats him. Avon Barksdale begins the series as the strongest drug dealer in West Baltimore. The police barely know he exists. McNulty has seen his name in court, though the department has no useful file on him and no recent photograph. Avon has already achieved the kind of secrecy most criminals would love to have. He owns the best territory, keeps his organization disciplined, and lets Stringer handle much of the daily business. He could remain distant and enjoy the money. Avon still needs to be Avon Barksdale from West Baltimore. His authority has a physical location. It lives in the towers, the low rises, Orlando's club, and every corner where his name settles an argument. Even the annual basketball game against Proposition Joe matters to him because winning in public matters. He arrives with his people, watches from the sideline, and turns a neighborhood game into a test of Barksdale pride. That attachment becomes more costly once the towers fall. Stringer finds a practical answer. Proposition Joe has better heroin, and the East Side wants access to Barksdale territory. A deal allows both sides to make money. Avon hears the same proposal and sees surrender. The corners carry a meaning that Stringer cannot calculate on a legal pad. Avon fought for that ground, lost people for it, and built his identity around controlling it. Sharing those corners feels like giving away part of himself. Marlowe understands this almost immediately. He refuses Stringer's offer to join the co-op because he has no interest in sharing power. Avon returns from prison and recognizes a challenge he understands. A younger man has taken West Side territory and refuses to acknowledge him. Avon responds with a war that drains money, attracts police attention, and forces his organization to move guns and soldiers around the city. The product can wait. His name on the West Side cannot. Avon has chances to think beyond Baltimore. He has money, family connections, and enough respect to live comfortably. None of those options give him the feeling he gets from being king of the West Side. When Stringer calls him a man who only knows how to be a gangster, Avon accepts the description. He hears an insult and answers with pride, because the gangster is the part of himself he trusts. That pride carries him back to prison. He survives, and he still has influence when Marlowe later visits Sergei. His organization is gone, his territory belongs to someone else, and the people who once made his name powerful are dead, imprisoned, or scattered. Avon remains Avon. The need to defend that identity costs him everything attached to it. Stringer Bell sees Avon's weakness better than anyone. He understands that territory has become less important once quality product can be sold through a cooperative. He studies economics, invests in real estate, and tries to make Baltimore's drug trade behave like a stable market. He wants meetings instead of wars, shared supply instead of bodies, and enough legitimate property to move his future away from the corners. His intelligence is real. The co-op works. Better heroin lowers the need for territorial violence, and dealers who once treated one another as enemies begin sitting around the same table. Stringer can imagine a criminal organization that earns more money while creating less attention. That already places him ahead of Avon in one important area. Stringer carries a different need into every legitimate room he enters. He wants developers, politicians, and businessmen to recognize him as one of them. He dresses correctly, learns their language, and puts money into projects he barely understands. Clay Davis sees the hunger immediately. Stringer wants access so badly that he keeps paying for it, and Clay keeps inventing new reasons why another payment is required. The humiliation hurts because Stringer has built his future around being accepted by people like Clay. Avon can laugh at being called a gangster. Stringer has spent years trying to prove he has grown beyond that word. When he finally learns that Clay has played him, his first instinct is to use the violence he claims to have outgrown. He asks Slim Charles about killing a state senator. Slim has to explain the obvious danger. Stringer also tries to control two worlds at once. He gives Colvin information that helps the police find Avon's weapons. He had already manipulated Omar into attacking Brother Malzone, hoping to remove a problem without taking responsibility. Both decisions return to him. Brother Malzone and Omar compare what happened and find the lie between them. Avon learns that Stringer gave him to the police. By the time Stringer stands in his unfinished building, the drug organization and the legitimate future have both turned against him. His final location says enough. He dies inside one of the development projects he had used to imagine his future, surrounded by bare concrete and open floors. The building was supposed to prove that he had escaped the street. It gives Omar and Brother Malzone an empty place to corner him. Stringer understood Avon's attachment and replaced it with one of his own. He needed recognition from a world that saw him as useful money, and he exposed himself trying to earn it. Proposition Joe gets closer to the Greeks' way of thinking. Joe avoids unnecessary war, speaks quietly, and understands the value of being underestimated. He runs much of his business from an appliance repair shop. When people bring him a problem, his instinct is to find a price and make an arrangement. The co-op suits him because cooperation turns unpredictable violence into manageable business. Joe survives Avon and Stringer. He handles Omar carefully, works with different crews, and becomes the link between Baltimore's dealers and the Greek supply. He knows that wholesale control provides more dependable power than standing on a corner. He also knows how to make himself useful. The other dealers need his product, his contacts, and his ability to settle disputes. His weakness grows out of that ability. Joe believes most men can be managed once they understand where the profit is. He looks at Marlowe and sees a young kingpin who needs education. He teaches him about money laundering, introduces him to Levy, takes him to the bank in the Caribbean, and slowly brings him into the co-op. Every lesson is supposed to make Marlowe easier to live with. Marlowe uses the education to remove the teacher. Joe has shown him how the larger system works, and more dangerously, confirmed that a direct connection to the supply exists. Marlowe keeps pushing toward Vondas. Joe knows what he is doing and still responds as a mentor. He wants to believe a stable arrangement can absorb one more ambitious man. Joe also remains connected to people and places in a way the Greek never allows. Cheese disappoints him repeatedly, yet family keeps buying Cheese another chance. Joe has enough money to live anywhere and remains in the house his grandfather bought. He takes pride in what that house represents. When Marlowe comes to kill him, Joe is surrounded by the history he chose to keep. Joe understands exactly what has happened in his final moments. He offers to disappear and knows Marlowe will reject it. His reputation for negotiation cannot save him from a man who sees compromise as weakness. Joe spent years proving that everybody could profit together. Marlowe only needed Joe long enough to learn the route to the source. Marlowe seems built to avoid every sentimental mistake made before him. He is colder than Avon, less trusting than Joe, and far more disciplined than Stringer. He keeps his organization small. Chris and Snoop place bodies in vacant houses, removing the public noise that usually brings police pressure. Marlowe changes communication systems, studies surveillance, and rarely says more than necessary. He also has no interest in pretending to be respectable. Stringer wants the downtown people to take him seriously. Marlowe walks into Levy's world only when it helps him protect money or avoid prison. He can sit quietly, listen, and learn. This is why he reaches the end of the series alive, rich and legally protected, while Avon, Stringer, and Joe lose their empires. The problem appears whenever his name enters the conversation. Marlowe can ignore money, advice, and even immediate danger. He cannot ignore the possibility that somebody has spoken about him without fear. A security guard asks him to respect the work the man is doing, and Marlowe has him killed. A young dealer calls him weak, and the boy disappears into a vacant. Omar attacks Marlowe's reputation in the street, and Marlowe's crew hides the insult from him because they know exactly how he will react. My Name is My Name gives Marlowe's entire organization its purpose. He wants a city full of people who lower their voices when they say it. The bodies create that silence. The corners give the silence a location. Chris and Snoop enforce it until fear feels like proof that Marlowe has become what he imagined. The legal deal at the end should feel like a complete victory. Marlowe keeps his freedom and money. Levy introduces him to legitimate businessmen who are interested in meeting the former king of Baltimore. Marlowe stands in the room and realizes that his name means very little there. He leaves the party, returns to a corner, and confronts two young dealers. One of them has heard of Omar. Neither reacts to Marlowe the way he expects. He takes the corner and walks away bleeding. That small scene reveals the limit of his victory. Marlowe can leave the drug trade under an excellent legal arrangement. He has no idea who he is without an audience that fears him. The Greek can lose an entire Baltimore operation and wait for another one. Marlowe receives a clean exit and walks back toward the only reputation he understands. Omar Little wants something different from all three kings. He has no organization to preserve and no interest in owning territory. He robs dealers, spends long periods away from Baltimore, and lives by a code that gives his violence a boundary. He refuses to target ordinary people and carries himself as though the distinction matters. The code protects a piece of Omar's humanity. It also gives his enemies a reliable way to reach him. Stringer attacks him through Brandon. The Barksdale crew violates the Sunday truce, while Omar is taking his grandmother to church. Marlowe has Butchie tortured and killed because he knows grief will bring Omar back to Baltimore. It works. Omar had escaped with Ronaldo and could have remained gone. Once Butchie dies, leaving feels like accepting the injury. He returns with a damaged leg, few allies, and an entire organization hunting him. He walks through the streets calling Marlowe's name because reputation now matters to his revenge. His code makes that revenge feel justified, and the same code keeps him in the city until Kennard kills him inside a convenience store. Bodhi stays for loyalty. He begins as a young Barksdale dealer and slowly watches the organization disappear around him. Wallace dies, D'Angelo dies, Stringer dies, Avon returns to prison. Bodhi keeps working the corner because the rules of the game still mean something to him. When Marlowe takes over, Bodhi tries to accept the new order. Little Kevin's murder convinces him that this order has no rules he can respect. His conversation with McNulty is limited and cautious. Bodhi still understands what the street will call it. He returns to his corner anyway and refuses to run when Marlowe sends men for him. Poot begs him to leave. Bodhi stands in the place that has given his life meaning and dies defending ground that was never truly his. Chris Partlow stays for loyalty of another kind. His discipline makes Marlowe's system possible. He trains soldiers, manages murders, and keeps emotion away from the work. Michael's stepfather breaks through that control. Chris recognizes the abuse without needing an explanation and beats the man to death with his hands. The rage is understandable. It also leaves DNA evidence and gives the police a murder they can place directly on him. Chris later accepts responsibility for the vacant house bodies and takes life in prison. Marlowe receives his deal. The most loyal man in the organization absorbs the legal cost. Chris has spent years making other people disappear, and one personal act makes him visible. Cheese has little loyalty and even less patience. Money moves him. He gives Butchie to Marlowe, betrays Proposition Joe, and expects the new arrangement to reward him. Calculation carries him through one transition and fails at the next. When Marlowe sells the Greek connection back to the co-op, Cheese offers money and expects the room to move on. Slim Charles remembers Joe and shoots him. Greed helps Cheese survive his uncle by a few months. It cannot purchase respect from the people forced to keep working beside him. Every one of these men has a different idea of victory. Avon wants his territory, Stringer wants entry into legitimate power, Joe wants a stable market, Marlowe wants his name to carry fear, Omar wants to live by his code, Bodhi wants to stand his ground. Chris wants to serve his people. Cheese wants the next payment. Their choices become predictable because the need underneath them stays visible. The Greek enters the story with almost none of that weight. He sits at the counter of a small diner and looks like a man waiting for coffee. Vondas conducts meetings, Sergei moves cargo and handles violence, Eaton manages the drugs, George Glekas fences stolen goods. The workers at the port deal with containers. Each person sees one part of the organization, and most business can continue without the Greek ever entering the room. This arrangement gives him distance from the first conversation. Avon also uses lieutenants, though everyone in West Baltimore knows that the organization belongs to Avon. The Greek's people protect more than his location. They protect the fact of who he is. Detectives spend most of Season 2 trying to climb toward a man whose name they do not know. When they finally get a photograph, they have captured the image of an older man walking near a hotel. The picture cannot tell them what country he came from, where he lives, or what identity appears on his passport. The nickname sounds like information and turns out to be another layer of cover. He casually tells Vondas that he is not even Greek. Vondas carries several passports and several names. Nationality, which gives many people in Season 2 a strong community identity, becomes a tool for these men. They can use it when useful and discard it when it becomes a trail. The Greek has no west side. His business uses Baltimore because ships arrive there, dock workers can move containers, and local dealers need wholesale product. Another port can serve the same purpose. Another diner can host a meeting. Another distributor can take the package. He earns money from movement, so movement never threatens his identity. There is no known Greek family home, neighborhood club, or public gathering where the organization has to show its strength. The Barksdales can be photographed at a basketball game because Avon wants to watch his sidebeat Proposition Joe. Marlowe eventually walks into the street because two boys fail to recognize him. The Greek could pass through the background of either scene without anybody noticing. His private life gives the investigators no second route toward the business. Avon treats retreat as humiliation because a corner abandoned today belongs to another man tomorrow. The Greek treats retreat as part of the work. Once he learns that the police are closing in, the operation begins shutting down. Phones, meeting places, and hotel rooms lose their value immediately. He and Vondas leave before Daniels' detail can reach them. Nobody gives a speech about holding the ground. The ground was useful, and now it is dangerous. His organization also works at a scale Baltimore's dealers rarely see. The drugs are one part of it. Stolen electronics, chemicals, liquor, and women all move through the same international routes. The dead women in the container create the investigation, yet even that horror begins as a shipping problem inside the organization. A crewman killed one woman and shut off the air when the others witnessed it. The Greek identifies the responsible man, has him killed, and destroys the features that could identify the body. He closes the loose end without allowing anger to change the larger plan. The people below him carry nearly all of the exposure. Double G puts his face on the warehouse where stolen goods are sold. Eaton handles narcotics. Sergey drives, collects, and kills. Vondas meets the dock workers and local dealers. When the investigation finally produces arrests, these are the people the police can connect to crimes. The Greek has built a business where middle management absorbs the evidence along with the daily work. That response is colder than Marlowe's violence because it has no audience. Marlowe leaves bodies in vacant houses to control information, though the killings still build his reputation inside the organization. The Greek does not need anyone on a Baltimore corner to know what happened. Violence removes a risk and disappears with it. Frank Sabatka believes years of business create some room for negotiation. The Greek appears to like Frank and understands what the port means to him. He is willing to continue working with him while Frank remains useful. Once the FBI warns that Frank has agreed to cooperate, the relationship ends. Frank walks toward a meeting hoping to save Ziggy and Nick. The Greek already knows that the conversation cannot be allowed to happen on Frank's terms. Frank's death exposes the difference between the Greek and Joe. Joe keeps trying to manage family loyalty even when Cheese repeatedly creates danger. The Greek measures Frank through the information available that morning. Years of cooperation do not create a debt large enough to outweigh the threat. He can feel some regret and still make the decision quickly. Nick survives because killing him offers less value. By the time Nick gives the police what he knows, the organization has withdrawn. The Greek understands that Nick knows a nickname and has seen a face. He knows the Greek's name, Vondas observes. The answer is simple. The name is not his name. Revenge would create activity when silence is safer. Omar could never accept that calculation. A murdered friend demands an answer. Avon could not accept it either when Marlowe challenged his territory. The Greek allows no insult to become more expensive than the business it affects. He has no street reputation to defend, so disrespect has nowhere to land. His relationship with Agent Koutras gives him protection that no Baltimore kingpin comes close to having. Koutras works in federal counterterrorism. The Greek gives him information about a Colombian cocaine shipment, producing a major federal seizure. In return, Koutras warns him about investigative danger, including Frank's decision to cooperate. The arrangement goes beyond paying a corrupt officer. Koutras appears to believe that protecting this source serves a larger federal priority. David Simon later confirmed that Koutras saw the Greek as a useful asset in the fight against terrorism and accepted the crimes left behind as part of that trade. The local detail is trying to solve the deaths of 14 women. The federal system has ranked another mission above them. Stringer spends enormous money trying to buy political access and never understands how little protection Clay Davis is actually selling. The Greek gives the government something it already wants. He studies the institution well enough to become useful inside its own priorities. One arm of law enforcement hunts him, while another warns him that the hunt is getting close. This is where calling him the smartest criminal in Baltimore can become too simple. He is careful and intelligent, though his greatest advantage is structural. The police know how to investigate a local organization. They map corners, identify phones, photograph meetings, and pressure people who share a city. The Greek has built a network that can lose every item on that map. A phone can be thrown away, a warehouse can close, a local partner can die, a passport can change. The supply route survives. The distinction between retail and supply matters. Avon, Joe and Marlowe need crews standing in public because the product has to reach customers. Every sale gives police another chance to stop someone, flip someone, or follow money upward. The Greek delivers wholesale quantities and lets Baltimore create the visible organization beneath him. The local king carries the corners, soldiers, bodies, and police attention. The Greek carries the option to choose a different local king. Season 5 proves that the escape was more than luck. The Greek and Vondas return to Baltimore after the port investigation has collapsed. Proposition Joe becomes their distributor, and the product moves through the co-op. The names beneath them have changed. The wholesale business continues. Marlowe eventually reaches Vondas and tries to buy a direct relationship. Vondas prefers Joe because Joe has been reliable, and the Greeks want distance from street-level players. Marlowe keeps coming. He offers clean money and presents himself as insurance against an uncertain future. The Greek sits at the diner counter during the meeting, listening while Marlowe thinks he is speaking only to a lieutenant. The Greek accepts the insurance. He understands what Marlowe's persistence means. Refusing him will not make him disappear, and Joe may soon become the casualty of that ambition. The Greek does not order Joe's murder. He also gives Joe no protection strong enough to stop it. His source in Baltimore matters less than preserving options with whoever controls Baltimore next. Joe dies, Marlowe receives the supply, and the packages keep moving. There is no crisis of loyalty inside the Greeks' organization because Marlowe has replaced a function. The distributor changed, the route remains. Marlowe later falls to an illegal wiretap built around the phone Vondas gives him. Even here, the investigation reaches the local contact rather than the source. Marlowe, Chris, and Monk face the case. The Greek and Vondas remain outside it. Marlowe eventually sells the connection back to the co-op for $10 million, and the wholesale arrangement passes again. The Greek has none of the qualities that made the other men easy to read. Avon could be pulled toward a fight over territory. The Greek owns no Baltimore ground. Stringer could be flattered with the promise of legitimate status. The Greek has no public future to build. Joe could be approached through cooperation and personal trust. The Greek treats trust as temporary evidence. Marlowe could be provoked through his name. The Greek's name is deliberately worthless. Omar could be reached through the people he loved. The Greek leaves personal feeling outside the decision. Bodhi could be found on his corner. The Greek has no corner. Chris could be exposed through loyalty and rage. The Greek places layers of people between his emotions and the work. He even avoids the quality that usually makes a criminal victory visible. He does not need to look like he won. Marlowe wants the street to repeat his name. Avon wants West Baltimore to remember who held it. Stringer wants a building with his name on the plans. The Greek can sit in the same diner and let everyone look past him. His phrase, business, always business, sounds almost boring. That boredom is part of the protection. Business has no wounded pride to satisfy. It does not need revenge after the threat has ended. It can stop on Tuesday, move through another port, and return under another identity months later. Every Baltimore kingpin tries to make the game express who he is. The Greek keeps himself separate enough to replace any piece of the game, including his own public identity. He wins because his version of power can survive retreat. He is willing to become smaller, quieter, and temporarily absent. The other criminals experience those things as a loss of self. They remain in place until the police, a rival, or one of their own people reaches them. The final drug organization in Baltimore still needs corners, soldiers, and a feared name. Those positions keep changing hands. The Barksdales give way to Marlowe. Marlowe gives way to the surviving members of the co-op. Bodies fill vacant houses, prison cells fill, and another child steps onto the corner. Above that local cycle, the supply remains available. The Greek does not conquer Baltimore in any dramatic sense. He outlasts the people who keep trying to conquer it. His victory is the quiet continuation of the same business after nearly everybody else has paid for needing the city to know who they were.